I want to tell you that South Africa has developed to the level where the policies are accommodating each and every one of the South African citizens, be it in rural area, be it in urban areas. But there are still gaps that which we are facing through the implementation of the policy. You know, once the policy has been adopted, then it needs implementation. In certain areas, like in rural areas, the policy is not implemented. It is only implemented by 1, 2, 3 schools and 1, 2, 3 individuals who are technologically adept. And again, the conception of skills development amongst teachers is also one of the most challenging aspects that we are facing in South Africa, because not every teacher is technologically adept. And if the policy is saying we should implement, but then the government fails, or the Department of Basic Education fails to train educators inclusively, because you might find that in certain areas, in urban areas, educators are well-resourced, well-equipped, they are training every day, or they are being trained every day. But in rural areas, educators are being neglected, by so saying. So another thing that is one of the most difficult gaps is lack of risk aversion, by the way. Let me just say risk aversion, wherein our educators are afraid to take on the risk of implementing the new technology system into learning and teaching. So that is one of those that prevents ICT integration in rural areas to be fully implemented. Yet the policy is saying it is implemented. And again, one of the major challenges again is what? Lack of technology tools. This is one of the biggest gaps in ICT integration. Lack of technology tools in rural schools. It is one of the major factors that derails and denies development of teachers and of learners in rural areas. And again, you know, once we are having all these gaps, then our development becomes very slow. And remember that once this development becomes very slow, it means the development of ICT integration in the continent will also be slow. But yet, we must acknowledge that once the policy is there, there is a conception of inequality based on the schools that are based on, I'm in the Limpopo province, wherein it is one of the richest, has got one of the richest platinum belt in the continent. But then the schools within those areas where there are industries, where there are mines, are those that are well equipped and well resourced. And behind those mountains, where minerals are exhumed, we are in the poorest area where the resources are not being invested in developing the education system of our rural schools. And yet, we also need to look at the inequality that exists between an educator who is in the urban areas and an educator who is in the rural areas. There is a huge gap between them. So in terms of technological integration in the classroom, the knowledge gap between them, it's quite huge, because there is no implementation in rural areas, there is lack of resources, and there is lack of training of those teachers in rural areas. But in most cities, in most sectors of the country, where resources are enough, teachers are trained enough, but yet we ignore the rural educators who are in the most remotest areas. So now initiatives like this To some, yes, it becomes difficult to reach. Like you can see that we have been distributing this amongst our educators, but only you might find that people could not afford to come in through lack of technology tools. Yet in our schools, the government is trying to provide gadgets to each and every learner. But now the government is also failing to implement the usage of those gadgets. Yet the educators who are not technologically trained cannot be able to train or integrate ICT through these gadgets that have been given to learners. I can tell you that in my school, almost half of my learners have got all these gadgets, but yet because not every teacher is technologically adept, they are failing to use them. So that is one of the major gaps. But policy-wise, South Africa is excellent. The curriculum has been, like coding and robotics has been included in the curriculum. So that is one of the major milestones that yet our country has achieved this far. But yes, there is still that gap between a rural teacher and an urban teacher, a rural learner and an urban learner. There is still that gap, that which I think it's a challenge for each and every country, for each and every educator elsewhere in the world, because we are only a small fraction that makes the whole of this world. So each one of us experiences these challenges, as I would generalize in this way. And thank you for the question. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. Please don't go yet. I love the diverse perspectives panelists, are bringing up to this, and that's why we have panelists across Southern Africa just to share their own perspective, and that's why I've been directing my questions, to the country, just for us to have a diverse, knowledge